The screech of tires tore through the Nevada desert. A mechanical wail that promised catastrophe. Ethan Caldwell, grease under his nails and sweat on his brow, sprinted toward the flaming wreckage of a prototype hypercar, a billion-dollar dream reduced to a ticking time bomb. He had 10 minutes, maybe less, to stop it from exploding and taking half the test track with it. Ethan wasn't supposed to be here. A 29-year-old engineer from Reno. He'd clawed his way from a trailer park to the elite R&D team at Apex Dynamics, a tech empire built on ambition and secrets. The Hypercar, codenamed Phoenix, was the brainchild of Billionaire CEO Julian Voss, a man whose charm could sell ice in a blizzard and whose vision for electric speed had the world buzzing. But the car was failing catastrophically, and Ethan was the only one who'd seen the flaw in its battery core. Ignored by the suits, he'd stayed late, poring over schematics, until the test run went haywire. Now, with flames licking the chassis, Ethan's heart pounded. He yanked open the hood, the heat searing his skin. The battery array was a maze of wires and molten metal, but he'd memorized every circuit. His hands moved with precision, tools flashing as he disconnected the overheating cells. One wrong move, and the explosion would erase him. But Ethan didn't flinch. He never had, not when his dad kicked him out at 17 for being gay. Not when he fought for every scholarship, every job, every scrap of respect. "Ethan, get out," shouted a technician from the sidelines. But Ethan ignored him, his focus razor sharp. The core stabilized, the hum of danger fading. He stumbled back, coughing through smoke, as the crew rushed in with extinguishers. The Phoenix was saved. So was Apex's future. Word spread fast. By morning, Ethan was summoned to the glass tower of Apex's Las Vegas headquarters. Julian Voss himself wanted to meet the man who'd saved his legacy. Ethan, in his scuffed boots and faded flannel, felt like an imposter stepping into the polished boardroom. Julian, 35 and radiating power in a bespoke suit, stood at the head of the table. His dark eyes locked onto Ethan's, and the air shifted electric. Unspoken. "You're the one," Julian said, voice low, almost reverent. "You saved my car." Ethan shrugged, uneasy under the billionaire's gaze. "Just doing my job." Julian's smile was disarming, a crack in his polished facade. No one else saw it. "You did. Why?" Ethan hesitated. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated." Their eyes held, a spark igniting. Julian offered Ethan a promotion on the spot, lead engineer on the Phoenix project. It was a dream, a leap from obscurity to the heart of Apex. But Ethan sensed something deeper in Julian's look, something that stirred feelings he'd buried since his last heartbreak. Days turned to weeks, and Ethan threw himself into the Phoenix. Late nights in the lab became late nights with Julian, their conversations shifting from circuits to dreams. Julian was magnetic, his confidence tempered by a vulnerability he hid from the world. He'd built Apex from nothing, a foster kid turned billionaire. But success hadn't erased the loneliness in his eyes. Ethan saw it because he knew it too, the ache of hiding who you are. One night, under the hum of fluorescent lights, Julian leaned closer over a blueprint. "You're not like anyone I've met," he murmured. Ethan's breath caught. The space between them shrank, and when Julian's hand brushed his, neither pulled away. It was a moment, fragile and real. That changed everything. But Apex wasn't a fairy tale. The boardroom buzzed with whispers about Ethan's sudden rise, about Julian's late-night visits to the lab. Ethan overheard the snide comments. Small-town kid got lucky. Voss's pet project. Worse were the murmurs about his personal life, dug up from his past. Ethan had never hidden who he was. But in the corporate world, being openly gay was a tightrope. He felt the weight of every stare, every smirk. Julian, too, faced pressure. The board demanded results, not scandals. Investors were circling, and the Phoenix's next test was make or break. Ethan worked tirelessly, refining the car's systems. But the closer he grew to Julian, the more he sensed the billionaire's guarded heart. Julian never spoke of his own past, his own desires. Was this connection real? Or was Ethan just a means to an end? Then came the night that shattered the fragile balance. Julian invited Ethan to dinner not in the lab, but at his penthouse. The city sparkled below, and over wine, Julian's walls came down. He spoke of his childhood, of hiding his truth to survive. "I've never let anyone in," he admitted, his voice raw. "Until you." Ethan's heart raced. "Then don't push me away." They kissed, tentative at first, then fierce, like two people who'd been starving for this moment. For Ethan, it was freedom, a love he'd never dared hope for. For Julian, it was a risk he'd never taken. But as dawn broke, reality loomed. Apex's world was unforgiving, and their secret wouldn't stay hidden for long. The Phoenix project roared forward, and so did Ethan and Julian's relationship. A quiet rebellion against the corporate machine. They stole moments in the lab, their hands brushing over schematics, their laughter echoing in empty hallways. But every touch carried a weight, the fear of discovery. Ethan saw it in Julian's tense shoulders, the way he'd glance at the door during their late-night talks. Apex was a kingdom of glass, and secrets didn't last. Ethan poured his soul into the hypercar. The next test was weeks away, and the board was restless. He redesigned the battery core, tweaking algorithms to boost efficiency. Julian watched him work, pride in his eyes. But Ethan felt the pressure. If the Phoenix failed, it wouldn't just be his failure, it would be Julian's too. One evening, as they tested a new prototype in the desert, Julian pulled Ethan aside. The stars burned bright above, and the hypercar gleamed like a predator. "You make this real," Julian said, his voice soft. "Not just the car. Us." Ethan's chest tightened. "You sure about that? Your world doesn't exactly roll out the red carpet for guys like me." Julian's jaw clenched. "My world doesn't own me." But it did. The next morning, Ethan overheard a board member in the break room. "Voss is distracted. This engineer's got him chasing rainbows." The word stung. But worse was the doubt they planted. Was he a liability to Julian's empire? Ethan pushed the thought down, focusing on the car. He couldn't afford to falter. The test day arrived. A high-stakes spectacle under Nevada's relentless sun. Investors, media, and the board filled the stands. Ethan stood by the control panel, heart hammering, as the Phoenix tore down the track. It hit 200 miles per hour, then 250. A blur of power and precision. The crowd roared as it crossed the finish line flawless. Ethan exhaled, relief flooding him. He'd done it. They'd done it. Julian found him in the chaos, pulling him into a quick, hidden embrace. "You're a genius," he whispered. Ethan grinned, but the moment was cut short. A board member, Claire Hargrove, approached, her smile sharp as a blade. "Impressive work, Mr. Caldwell. Julian's lucky to have you." Her tone implied more than she said, and Ethan's stomach twisted. That night, Julian threw a celebration at his mansion. Champagne flowed, but Ethan felt out of place among the elite. He caught Claire watching him, her eyes calculating. Later, she cornered him by the bar. "You're a bright kid, Ethan. But be careful. Julian's got a lot to lose." Ethan bristled. "So do I." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Do you? Or are you just along for the ride?" Her words lingered, gnawing at Ethan's confidence. He found Julian on the balcony, staring at the city. "What's wrong?" Julian asked, sensing his unease. "People are talking," Ethan said. "About us. About me." Julian's face darkened. "Let them talk. They don't matter." But they did. The next week, an anonymous email hit the board's inbox. Sees a photo of Ethan and Julian. Too close. Too unguarded. Taken in the lab. The message was clear. Trouble was brewing. Ethan's past was dragged into the open as coming out. His struggles, twisted into ammunition. The board called an emergency meeting, and Julian was summoned alone. Ethan waited in the lab, pacing, dread coiling in his gut. When Julian returned, his face was a mask. "They want me to distance myself," he said. "From you." Ethan's heart sank. "And what did you say?" "I told them to go to hell." Julian's voice was fierce, but his eyes betrayed fear. "But they're not done. They never are." Ethan wanted to believe in Julian's defiance, but doubt crept in. He'd fought too hard to be reduced to a scandal. Yet walking away from Julian felt impossible. They were bound now, their futures tied to the Phoenix and to each other. The fallout was swift. The board didn't fire Ethan. They couldn't. Not after he'd saved the Phoenix, but they made his life hell. Memos questioned his credentials. Colleagues whispered behind his back. Ethan gritted his teeth and worked harder. But the isolation stung. He'd faced prejudice before. But this was a new beast: corporate warfare, where power trumped truth. Julian was under siege too. Investors threatened to pull funding unless he cleaned up the optics. Claire Hargrove led the charge, her influence growing. She didn't care about Ethan's sexuality. She cared about control. Julian's defiance made him a target, and Ethan was collateral damage. Still, they clung to each other. Late nights in Julian's penthouse became their sanctuary. Over takeout and soft music, they shared stories: Ethan's of rebuilding his life after being disowned, Julian's of navigating a world that demanded perfection. "I've always been alone," Julian confessed one night, his head resting on Ethan's shoulder. "Until you." Ethan wanted to believe they could outlast the storm, but the pressure was relentless. The Phoenix was now in production, and Ethan's role as lead engineer put him in the spotlight. Every success was scrutinized, every mistake magnified. He caught Julian arguing with Claire in a hallway. Their voices low but heated. "He's not a liability," Julian snapped. "He's the best we've got." Claire's response was icy. "Then prove it, or this company sinks." Ethan felt the weight of her words. He threw himself into the Phoenix's final tweaks, ensuring it was ready for its global unveiling. But the closer the deadline loomed, the more he sensed Julian pulling back. Not physically, their nights together were still electric, but emotionally. Julian's smiles were tighter, his silences heavier. One evening, Ethan found a letter on Julian's desk, half hidden under papers. It was from a lawyer, outlining a reputation management plan code for distancing Julian from Ethan. Ethan's blood ran cold. He confronted Julian that night, the letter trembling in his hand. "Is this what you want?" Ethan asked, voice breaking. "To save your company by cutting me loose?" Julian's face crumpled. "No. God. No. I'd burn it all down before I let you go." "Then why keep this?" Ethan held up the letter. Julian sank into a chair, defeated. "Because I'm scared. Not of losing Apex. Of losing you." Ethan knelt beside him, their hands entwining. "You won't. But we can't keep hiding." They made a pact that night to face the world together, no matter the cost. But the world had other plans. The Phoenix's unveiling was set for a gala in San Francisco, a glitzy event packed with media and moguls. Ethan was expected to present the car, but Claire had other ideas. She leaked more photos to the press, grainy shots of Ethan and Julian, intimate and unmistakable. The headlines exploded. "Billionaire's secret romance threatens tech empire." The gala loomed like a battlefield. Ethan and Julian knew showing up together would be a statement, one that could make or break them. They spent the night before in each other's arms, not speaking, just holding on. Ethan felt the weight of every choice, every risk. But he also felt the strength of what they'd built, not just a car, but a love worth fighting for. San Francisco buzzed with anticipation as the gala approached. The Phoenix was the star, but the headlines screamed about Ethan and Julian. Paparazzi swarmed the venue, a sleek waterfront pavilion glowing under chandeliers. Ethan, in a borrowed tux, felt like a fraud among the elite. Julian, ever composed, gripped his hand backstage. "We do this together," he said. Ethan nodded, heart racing. Together. They stepped onto the stage, and the room fell silent. Ethan spoke first, his voice steady as he unveiled the Phoenix, a masterpiece of engineering, a symbol of what was possible when you dared to dream. The crowd applauded, but Ethan saw Claire in the front row, her expression unreadable. Julian took the mic next, praising Ethan's brilliance, his words laced with pride and something deeper. The audience noticed. Whispers spread. After the unveiling, the gala turned festive, but tension simmered. Ethan overheard investors muttering about distractions. Claire approached, her smile venomous. "Bold move. Gentlemen, hope you're ready for the consequences." Julian's eyes flashed. "We're ready for anything." But the consequences came faster than expected. The next morning, a major investor pulled out, citing instability. The board called an emergency meeting, and Ethan wasn't invited. Julian went alone, his face grim. Hours later, he returned to the lab, his voice hollow. They want me to step down as CEO. Or fire you. Ethan's stomach dropped. What did you say? I told them I'd quit first. Julian's hands shook. But they're not bluffing. They'll tank the company to prove a point. Ethan felt the walls closing in. He'd fought for everything: his career, his identity, his love, and now it was slipping away. Maybe I should go, he said quietly. Save you the trouble. Julian grabbed his shoulders. Don't you dare. You're worth more than their games. But Ethan wasn't so sure. He spent the night alone, staring at the city from his cheap apartment. Memories flooded him: his dad's rejection, the years of scraping by, the thrill of meeting Julian. He'd never backed down before. But this felt different. This wasn't just about him. It was about Julian's dream, Apex's future. The next day, Ethan made a choice. He marched into the boardroom uninvited, facing a sea of hostile faces. You want me gone, he said, voice steady. Fine. But the Phoenix doesn't run without me. You need me more than you hate me. Claire leaned forward, smirking. You're replaceable, Mr. Caldwell. Am I? Ethan slid a tablet across the table, displaying the Phoenix's proprietary code only he fully understood. Try building another one without this. The room went quiet. Julian, standing in the corner, looked at Ethan with a mix of awe and fear. The board didn't fire Ethan that day, but the tension didn't ease. Ethan knew he'd only bought time. He and Julian were still on borrowed ground, their love a lightning rod in a storm they couldn't control. The Phoenix hit the market, and the world took notice. Orders poured in, and Apex's stock soared. Ethan's name was everywhere. Tech blogs called him a genius, a hero. But the spotlight burned. Every interview, every photo, came with questions about his relationship with Julian. The scrutiny was relentless, and Ethan felt like a target. Julian, meanwhile, was fighting his own battles. The board hadn't forced him out, but they'd tightened their grip. Claire pushed for a restructuring that would sideline Ethan, framing it as protecting the company. Julian resisted, but the strain showed. Late nights in the lab became rare. Julian was buried in meetings, damage control, trying to save his vision. Ethan felt the distance growing. He missed the easy laughter, the stolen glances. One night, he found Julian in his office, staring at a photo of them from the gala. I don't know how to fix this, Julian admitted. I built this company, but it's tearing us apart. Ethan took his hand. Then let's fight for us, not just Apex. They tried. They stole weekends away, driving the Phoenix through empty desert roads. The hum of the car their only soundtrack. But the world kept intruding. A tabloid published a hit piece, digging into Ethan's past, his estranged family, his struggles. Julian's foster care history was dragged up too, twisted to paint him as unstable. The board seized the chance, scheduling a vote to oust Julian. Ethan couldn't watch it happen. He dug into Apex's records, looking for leverage. Late one night, he found a trail of emails showing Claire's secret dealings with a rival company. She'd been sabotaging the Phoenix, leaking flaws to competitors, all to weaken Julian's position. Ethan's hands shook as he copied the files. This could save Julian, but it could also destroy everything. He showed Julian the evidence. "We can expose her," Ethan said. "End this." Julian hesitated, his face torn. "If we do this, there's no going back. The board will implode. Apex might not survive." Ethan swallowed hard. "And if we don't, we lose everything anyway." They agreed to act, but carefully. They leaked the emails anonymously to a trusted tech journalist. The story broke the next day, and Claire was summoned to an emergency board meeting. She denied everything, but the evidence was ironclad. By evening, she was out, her allies scrambling to save face. The victory was bittersweet. The board was in chaos, and Apex's stock dipped. Julian faced a new wave of pressure to stabilize the company. Ethan felt the guilt creeping in had he pushed too far. But Julian pulled him close, their foreheads touching. "You saved us," he whispered. Again. For a moment, they believed they'd won. But the board wasn't done. They demanded Julian make a public statement, distancing himself from the controversy. Ethan's heart sank as Julian prepared for the press conference. Would he bend to their will, or stand by their love? The press conference was a circus. Cameras flashed as Julian stepped to the podium, his face a mask of resolve. Ethan watched from the sidelines, his stomach in knots. The board had scripted Julian's speech words meant to appease investors, to bury their relationship under corporate jargon. But as Julian began, his voice wavered. "I built Apex to push boundaries," he said, tossing the script aside. "Not to hide who I am. Ethan Caldwell isn't just the engineer who saved the Phoenix. He's the man I love." The room erupted gasps, shouts, clicks of cameras. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. Julian had just burned every bridge, and he'd done it for them. Reporters surged forward, questions flying. But Julian grabbed Ethan's hand and pulled him to the podium. "We're done hiding," he said, loud enough for the mics to catch. The fallout was immediate. Social media exploded. Some praised Julian's courage. Others called it a PR disaster. Investors pulled millions, and the board scheduled another vote. But something shifted. Employees rallied behind Julian, sharing stories of his leadership, his vision. Customers pre-ordered the Phoenix in droves, drawn to the story of two men defying the odds. The tide was turning, but not fast enough. Ethan and Julian retreated to the desert, needing space to breathe. They parked the Phoenix under the stars, the same spot where they'd first connected. "Did I ruin us?" Julian asked, his voice small. Ethan shook his head. "You made us real." They spent the night planning not just for Apex, but for a future together. Ethan proposed an idea: open source the Phoenix's core tech. It would cost Apex profits but gain public trust, proving they were more than a corporate machine. Julian hesitated, then nodded. "Let's do it." The move was radical. Tech blogs called it suicide. Others called it genius. The board was furious, but the public loved it. Apex's stock stabilized as grassroots support grew. Ethan and Julian became symbols not just of innovation, but of authenticity. Still, the board vote loomed, and Julian's fate as CEO hung in the balance. The night before the vote, Ethan found an old journal in Julian's penthouse, filled with sketches of cars and dreams. One page had a note, "Find someone who believes in you." Ethan smiled, tears in his eyes. He knew what he had to do. He drafted a letter to the board, not as an engineer, but as Julian's partner. He laid out everything: Julian's vision, his sacrifices, his heart. "You can fire him," he wrote, "but you'll lose the soul of Apex." He sent it to every board member, knowing it might not change their minds but needing to try. The vote came. Julian survived. Barely. The board was split, but the public's support and Ethan's letter tipped the scales. They'd won. For now. But the real victory was in the quiet moments after, when Julian pulled Ethan close and whispered, "We're unstoppable." Life didn't get easier, but it got clearer. Ethan and Julian were out. Unapologetically. Apex was theirs to rebuild, and they did it together. The Phoenix became a global sensation, not just for its speed, but for what it represented: resilience, innovation, love. Ethan led the engineering team, his ideas shaping Apex's future. Julian, still CEO, became a reluctant icon, speaking at conferences about authenticity in leadership. But the world wasn't done testing them. Hate mail arrived. Online trolls spewed venom, and some investors never returned. Ethan felt the sting, but Julian's hand in his was a reminder they'd faced worse. They hired a new PR team, one that embraced their story. And slowly, the narrative shifted. Apex wasn't just a tech company, it was a movement. 1 year after the gala, Ethan and Julian stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. The wind was sharp, the sunset blazing. Julian pulled out a small box, his hands trembling. "I've built a lot in my life," he said, voice thick. "But you're the only thing I can't live without. Marry me." Ethan's laugh was half a sob. "You stole my line." They kissed, the ocean roaring below, and Ethan said yes. The ring was simple. Titanium, a nod to the Phoenix. They didn't care about the headlines this time. This was theirs. Planning a wedding wasn't easy in their world. They wanted it small, personal. But Apex's board had other ideas. A public wedding could be a PR coup, they argued. Ethan hated the idea, but Julian saw the potential. "Let's show them who we are," he said. "Not just for us, for everyone who's had to hide." The wedding was set for a rooftop in Las Vegas, the city that had shaped their story. Invitations went out, including to the board. Ethan hesitated over those names, remembering their betrayal. "They don't deserve to be there," he told Julian. "Maybe not," Julian said. "But we deserve to show them we won." The guest list grew. A mix of friends, employees, and industry giants. Ethan's estranged family wasn't invited. He'd made peace with that wound. Instead, he invited his old mentor from college, the one who'd believed in him when no one else did. Julian invited his foster sister, the only family he'd ever known. The event was shaping up to be more than a wedding, it was a statement. As the date approached, Ethan felt a mix of nerves and pride. He'd never imagined a life where he could love openly, build fearlessly. Julian, too, seemed lighter, as if shedding the weight of years spent hiding. They stood together in the lab one night, the phoenix gleaming nearby. We did this, Ethan said, his voice soft. Julian smiled. And we're just getting started. The wedding day dawned clear. Las Vegas sparkling under a desert sun. The rooftop was transformed white roses. Soft lights. The phoenix parked as a centerpiece, its curves catching the light. Ethan wore a tailored suit, his nerves humming as he stood at the altar. Julian, beside him, looked radiant, his smile brighter than the city below. The guests filled the space, a sea of faces, some supportive, some skeptical. The board members sat in the front row, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. Ethan's mentor beamed from the sidelines, and Julian's foster sister wiped away tears. The officiant, a friend from Apex, spoke of love and courage, her words weaving their story into something universal. When it was time for vows, Ethan went first, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. Julian, you saw me when I was invisible. You gave me a reason to fight, not just for a car, but for us. I promise to stand by you, to build with you, to love you through every storm. Julian's eyes glistened. Ethan, you saved more than my hypercar. You saved me. I promise to be your partner, your home, your truth no matter what the world throws at us. They exchanged rings, the crowd erupting in applause. But the moment that shook the boardroom came later. During the reception, Ethan and Julian took the stage, hand in hand, and announced Apex's new mission, a foundation to support LGBTQ+ youth in STEM, funded by Phoenix Profits. The board members shifted uncomfortably, realizing this wasn't just a wedding, it was a revolution. Claire's absence was noted. She'd faded from the industry after her scandal. The remaining board members clapped politely, but their eyes betrayed shock. Ethan and Julian had turned their love into a legacy, one that would outlast any corporate game. As the night ended, they danced under the stars, the phoenix gleaming nearby. Guests toasted to their courage, their love, their future. Ethan leaned into Julian, whispering, "We did it." Julian kissed him softly. "We're just getting started." Years later, the Phoenix became a legend. But so did Ethan and Julian. Their story inspired countless other engineers, dreamers, lovers who saw in them a truth, love. Like innovation, thrives when you dare to be seen. And in every hum of a hypercar, in every spark of a new idea, their legacy lived on, a testament to what happens when two hearts refuse to break.